Hare Krishna, everybody. Welcome back to the daily readings of Srila Prabhupada's books, where we are here contentedly contributing to the peace of the world by sending out the transcendental vibration of the Sri Caitanya-caritämrta, which, as we know, sound goes out and doesn't just stop. It just keeps traveling for long distances, for long periods of time. So just like the holy name, if we hear Srila Prabhupada's books out loud together, we are doing our part, more than doing our part, in helping to purify the world. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, that I'm reading every day, explains in a poetic glorification how dear the Caitanya-caritämrta is to him and why. He was giving a lecture in Munger, which is just on the bank of the Ganges. And just as he ended his lecture, there was an earth tremor, and the water of the Ganga kind of came up and then receded. Then he said, in due course, Mahapralaya, devastating floods, will inundate the entire universe. If you attempt to survive by swimming in that deluge, then do not neglect to take hold of Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam, and Sri Caitanya-caritämrta. Or, if you cannot hold all three, then release Bhagavad Gita. If necessary, you may also relinquish Srimad Bhagavatam, but under no circumstances release your hold on Sri Caitanya-caritämrta, for if this one book remains, then the flood can do no actual damage, because after it is subsided, the message of Shastra can be revived from Sri Caitanya-caritämrta alone, it being the essence of all Shastras. So I was thinking more about this yesterday, and I came to the conclusion that because the verses of Caitanya-caritämrta are sprinkled with all the verses with many verses from all the different Shastras, and it kind of weaves it together, strings them together in such a way that you can understand the import of them all and how they all come to the same conclusion. This is not just, what's the word? Exaggeration. It's actually a fact. Jaya Jaya Sri Caitanya Jaya Nityänanda Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Jaya Sri Caitanya Jaya Nityänanda Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaur Bhakta Vrinda. So, we heard in the first 4 chapters the glories of the spiritual masters, and then the glories of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And now, here in the 5th chapter, we're beginning to hear the glories of Lord Balaram. This is extensive chapter and extensive philosophy, because Lord Balaram, he's the supreme personality of Servitor Godhead. He's the first form of Krishna's that actually considers himself a servant of Krishna. He's the first expansion, and he considers himself a servant of Krishna. Krishna doesn't consider himself a servant of himself. But when he comes as Lord Chaitanya, he acts like it. This is his inconceivable mystic potency. So now we've come to text 43. Yesterday we heard a very long purport. I didn't actually count the number of pages, but it took well over an hour just to read the verses. And we heard a intense description of how all the forms of Krishna centered around the Chaturvyuha expansions, but all of the forms of Krishna are Krishna, eternally, supremely potent, and supremely and eternally existent in the spiritual world. So now we're taking off from there. Chapter 5, text 42. There, in the spiritual sky, the personal feature of Balaram, called Mahasankarshan, is the shelter of the spiritual energy. He is the primary cause, the cause of all causes. Text 43. One variety of the pastimes of the spiritual energy is described as pure goodness, Vishuddha Sattva. It comprises all the abodes of Vaikuntha. 44. The 6 attributes are all spiritual. Know for certain that they are all manifestations of the opulence of Sankarshan. 45. There is one marginal potency known as the Jiva. Mahasankarshan is the shelter of all the Jivas. 46. Sankarshan is the original shelter of the Purusha from whom this world is created and in whom it is dissolved. He, Sankarshan, is the shelter of everything. He is wonderful in every respect, and his opulences are infinite. Even Ananta cannot describe his glory. 48. That Sankarshan, who is transcendental pure goodness, is a partial expansion of Nityänanda Balaräma. 49. I have briefly explained the 8th verse. Now please listen with attention as I explain the 9th verse. Remember, we're hearing the meanings of the first 14 chapters of this literature, and then the rest of the book will elaborate on the details. This is text 50, and it is it is the 8th verse of the Caitanya-caritämrta, Ädi-lilä. Ädi-lilä. Maya Bharta Janda Sangashrayanga Chete Sakshat Karanam Bodhi Madhye Yasai Kanksha Sri Puman Adi Devas Tam Sri Nityänanda Ramam Prapadye. I offer my full obeisances under the feet of Sri Nityänanda Ram, whose partial representation, called Karanodakashaya Vishnu, lying on the Karana ocean, is the original Purusha, the master of the illusory energy and the shelter of all the universes. Text 51. Outside the Vaikuntha planets is the impersonal Brahman effulgence, and beyond that effulgence is the Karana ocean, or causal ocean. Purport. The impersonal glowing effulgence, known as the impersonal Brahman, is the outer space of the Vaikuntha planets in the spiritual sky. Beyond that impersonal Brahman is the great causal ocean, which lies between the material and spiritual skies. The material nature is a byproduct of this causal ocean. Karanodakashaya Vishnu, who lies upon the causal ocean, creates the universes merely by glancing upon material nature. Therefore, Krishna personally has nothing to do with the material creation. The Bhagavad Gita confirms that the Lord glances over material nature, and thus she produces the many material universes. Neither Krishna in Goloka nor Narayana in Vaikuntha comes directly in contact with the material creation. They are completely aloof from the material energy. It is the function of Mahasankarshan in the form of Karanadakashayi Vishnu to glance over the material creation, which is situated beyond the limits of the causal ocean. Material nature is connected with the personality of Godhead by his glance over her and nothing more. It is said that she is impregnated by the energy of his glance. The material energy, Maya, never even touches the causal ocean, for the Lord's glance focuses upon her from a great distance away. The glancing power of the Lord agitates the entire cosmic energy, and thus its actions begin at once. This indicates that matter, however powerful she may be, has no power by herself. Her activity begins by the grace of the Lord, and then the entire cosmic creation is manifested in a systematic way. The example of a woman's conception can help us understand this subject to a certain extent. The mother is passive, but the father puts his energy within the mother, and thus she conceives. She supplies the ingredients for the birth of the child in her womb. Similarly, the Lord activates material nature, which then supplies the ingredients for cosmic development. Material nature has two different phases. The aspect called pradhan supplies the material ingredients for cosmic development, and the aspect called maya causes the manifestation of her ingredients, which are temporary, like foam in the ocean. In reality, the temporary manifestations of material nature are originally caused by the spiritual glance of the Lord. The personality of Godhead is the direct or remote cause of creation, and material nature is the indirect or immediate cause. Materialistic scientists, puffed up by the magical changes their so-called inventions have brought about, cannot see the real potency of Godhead behind matter. Therefore, the jugglery of science is gradually leading people to a godless civilization at the cost of the goal of human life. Having missed the goal of life, materialists run after self-sufficiency, not knowing that material nature is already self-sufficient by the grace of God, thus creating a colossal hoax in the name of civilization. They create an imbalance in the natural self-sufficiency of material nature. To think of material nature as all in all, not knowing the original cause, is ignorance. Lord Chaitanya appeared in order to dissipate this darkness of ignorance by igniting this spark of spiritual life that can, by his causeless mercy, enlighten the entire world. Let's read that again. That's really sweet. To think of material nature as all in all, not knowing the original cause, is ignorance. Lord Chaitanya appeared to dissipate this darkness of ignorance by igniting the spark of spiritual life that can, by his causeless mercy, enlighten the entire world. To explain how Maya acts by Krishna's power, the author of Sri Caitanya-caritämrta gives the example of an iron rod in a fire. Although the rod is not fire, it becomes red hot and acts like fire itself. Similarly, all the actions and reactions of material nature are not actually the work of material nature, but are actions and reactions of the energy of the Supreme Lord manifested through matter. Let me read that again. Similarly, all the actions and reactions of material nature are not actually the work of material nature, but are actions and reactions of the energy of the Supreme Lord manifested through matter. The power of electricity is transmitted through the medium of copper, but this does not mean that the copper is electricity. The power is generated at the powerhouse under the control of an expert living being. Similarly, behind all the jugglery of the natural laws is a great living being who is a person like the mechanical engineer in the powerhouse. It is by his intelligence that the entire cosmic creation moves in a systematic way. The modes of nature, which directly cause material actions, are also originally activated by Narayana. A simple example will explain how this is so. When a potter manufactures a pot from clay, the potter's wheel, his tools, and the clay are the immediate causes of the pot, but the potter is the chief cause. Similarly, Narayana is the chief cause of all material creations, and the material energy supplies the ingredients of matter. Therefore, without Narayana, all other causes are useless, just as the potter's wheel and tools are useless without the potter himself. Since materialistic scientists ignore the personality of Godhead, it is as if they were concerned with the potter's wheel, the potter's rotation, the wheel's rotation, the potter's tools, and the ingredients for the pots, but had no knowledge of the potter himself. Therefore, modern science has created an imperfect, godless civilization that is in gross ignorance of the ultimate cause. Scientific advancement should have a good goal to attain, and that great goal should be the personality of Godhead. In the Bhagavad Gita it is said that after conducting research for many, many births, great men of knowledge who stress the importance of experimental thought can know the personality of Godhead, who is the cause of all causes. When one knows Him perfectly, one surrenders unto Him and then becomes a Mahatma. Text 52. Surrounding Vaikuntha is a mass of water that is endless, unfathomed, and unlimited. 53. The earth, water, fire, air, and ether of Vaikuntha are all spiritual. Material elements are not found there. 54. The water of the Karna ocean, which is the original cause, is therefore spiritual. The sacred Ganges, which is but one drop of it, purifies the fallen souls. In that ocean lies a plenary portion of Lord Sankrshan. He is known as the first Purusha, the creator of the total material energy. He, the cause of the universes, the first incarnation, casts his glance over Maya. Maya Shakti resides outside the Karna ocean. Maya cannot touch its waters. Maya has two varieties of existence. One is called Pradhan, or Prakriti. It supplies the ingredients of the material world. Purport. Maya, the external energy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is divided into two parts. Maya is both the cause of the cosmic manifestation and the agent who supplies its ingredients. As the cause of the cosmic manifestation, she is known as Maya, and as the agent supplying the ingredients of the cosmic manifestation, she is known as Pradhan. An explicit description of these divisions of the external energy is given in Srimad Bhagavatam 11:24, 1 through 4. Elsewhere in Srimad Bhagavatam, 10:63-26, the ingredients and cause of the material cosmic manifestation are described as follows. Kalo daivam karma jiva svabhavo dravyam chaitram prana atma vikaraha tat sanghato bijaroha pravahas twan mayaisha tan nishedham prapadye. O my Lord, time, O my Lord, time, activity, providence, and nature are four parts of the causal aspect, maya, of the external energy. The conditioned vital force, the subtle material ingredients called dravya, the material nature, which is the field of activity, where the false ego acts as the soul, as well as the 11. Let's read this again. This is a little complicated to read out loud properly so that you can understand. Now we're reading the verse, which is the 10th canto, 63rd chapter, 26th verse. O my Lord, time, activity, providence, and nature are four parts of the causal aspect, maya, of the external energy. Are four parts of the causal aspect, maya, of the external energy. The conditioned vital force, the subtle material ingredients called dravya, and material nature, which is the field of activity where the false ego acts as the soul, as well as the 11 senses and 5 elements, earth, water, fire, air, and ether, which are the 16 ingredients of the body. These are the ingredient aspect of maya. The body is generated from activity, and activity is generated from the body. Can we read that again? The body is generated from activity, and activity is generated from the body. Just as a tree is generated from the seed that is generated from a tree. This reciprocal cause and effect is called maya. My dear Lord, you can save me from this cycle of cause and effect. I worship your lotus feet. Very nice prayer. Although the living entity is primarily related to the causal portion of maya, he is nevertheless conducted by the ingredients of maya. 3 forces of work in the causal portion of maya. I'm going to read the beginning of this paragraph again. Although the living entity is primarily related to the causal portion of maya, he is nevertheless conducted by the ingredients of maya. 3 forces work in the causal portion of maya: knowledge, desire, and activity. The material ingredients are the manifestation of maya as pradhan. In other words, when the 3 qualities of maya are in the dormant stage, they exist as prakriti, avyakta, or pradhan. The word avyakta, referring to the non-manifested, is another name of pradhan. In the avyakta stage, material nature is without varieties. Varieties are manifested by the pradhan portion of maya. The word pradhan is therefore more important than avyakta or prakriti. Text 59. Because prakriti is dull and inert, it cannot actually be the cause of the material world. But Lord Krishna shows his mercy by infusing his energy into the dull, inert material nature. 60. Thus Prakriti, by the energy of Lord Krishna, becomes the secondary cause, just as iron becomes red hot by the energy of fire. 61. Therefore Lord Krishna is the original cause of the cosmic manifestation. Prakriti is like the nipples on the neck of a goat, because they cannot give any milk. Purport. The external energy composed of pradhan or prakriti. The external energy composed of pradhan or prakriti as the ingredient supplying portion and maya as the causal portion is known as Maya Shakti. Inert material nature is not the actual cause of the material manifestation. For Karanarnavashayi, Mahavishnu, the plenary expansion of Krishna, activates all the ingredients. It is in this way that material nature has the power to supply the ingredients. It is in this way that material nature has the power to supply the ingredients. The example given is that iron has no power to heat or burn, but after coming in contact with fire, the iron becomes red hot and can then diffuse light and burn other things. Material nature is like iron, for it has no independence to act without the touch of Vishnu, who is compared to fire. Lord Vishnu activates material nature by the power of his glance, and then the iron-like material nature becomes a material supplying agent, just as iron made red hot becomes a burning agent. Material nature cannot independently become an agent for supplying the material ingredients. This is more clearly explained by Sri Kapiladev, an incarnation of Godhead in Srimad Bhagavatam 3:28, 40. Yatol mukhad vish pulingad dumad vapi swasambhavat apyatmavena vimatad yatagni pritag ulmakat. Although smoke, flaming wood, and sparks are all considered together as the ingredients of fire, the flaming wood is nevertheless different from the fire, and the smoke is different from the flaming wood. The material elements, earth, water, fire, etc., are like the smoke. The living entities are like the sparks, and material nature, as pradhan, is like the flaming wood. But all of them together are recipients of power from the Supreme Personality of Godhead and are thus able to manifest their individual capacities. In other words, the Supreme Personality of Godhead is the origin of all manifestations. Material nature can supply only when it is activated by the glance of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Just as a woman can deliver a child after being impregnated by the semen of a man, so material nature can supply the material ingredients after being glanced upon by Mahavishnu. Therefore, pradhan cannot be independent of the superintendence of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This is confirmed in the Bhagavad Gita 9:10. Maya jakshena prakriti suyate sacharacharam. Prakriti, the total material energy, works under the superintendence of the Lord. The original source of the material elements is Krishna. Therefore, the attempt of the atheistic Sankhya philosophers to consider material nature the source of these elements, forgetting Krishna, is useless, like trying to get milk from the nipple-like bumps of skin hanging on the neck of a goat. Text 62. The Maya aspect of material nature is the immediate cause of the cosmic manifestation. But it cannot be the real cause, for the original cause is Lord Narayana. 63. Just as the original cause of an earthen pot is the potter, so the creator of the material world is the first Purusha incarnation, Karanarvanishayi Vishnu. 64. Lord Krishna is the creator, and Maya only helps him as an instrument, just like the potter's wheel and other instruments are the instrumental causes of a pot. 65. The first Purusha casts his glance at Maya from a distance, and thus he impregnates her with the seed of life in the form of the living entities. 66. The reflected rays of his body mix with Maya, and thus Maya gives birth to myriad universes. Purport. The Vedic conclusion is that the cosmic manifestation, visible to the eyes of the conditioned soul, is caused by the Absolute Truth, the personality of Godhead, through the exertion of his specific energies. Although in the conclusion of atheistic deliberations, this manifested cosmic manifestation is attributed to material nature. The energy of the Absolute Truth is exhibited in three ways: spiritual, material, and marginal. The Absolute Truth is identical with his spiritual energy. Only when contacted by the spiritual energy can the material energy work, and the temporary material manifestations thus appear active. In the conditioned state, the living entities of the marginal energy are a mixture of spiritual and material energies. The marginal energy is originally under the control of the spiritual energy, but under the control of the material energy, the living entities have been wandering in forgetfulness within the material world since time immemorial. The conditioned state is caused by misuse of the individual independence of the spiritual platform, for this separates the living entity from the association of the spiritual energy. But when the living entity is enlightened by the grace of the Supreme Lord or his pure devotee and becomes inclined to revive his original state of loving service, he is on the most auspicious platform of eternal bliss and knowledge. The marginal jiva, the living entity, misuses his independence and becomes averse to the eternal service attitude when he independently thinks that he is not energy but the energetic. This misconception of his own existence leads him to the attitude of lording it over material nature. What a nice paragraph which explains the fall of the jiva. Material nature appears to be just the opposite of the spiritual energy. The fact is that the material energy can work only when in contact with the spiritual energy. Originally, the energy of Krishna is spiritual, but it works in diverse ways, like electrical energy, which can exhibit the functions of refrigerating or heating through its manifestations in different ways. The material energy is spiritual energy covered by a cloud of illusion or Maya. Therefore, the material energy is not self-sufficient in working. Krishna invests his spiritual energy into material energy, and then it can act, just as iron can act like fire after being heated by fire. The material energy can act only when empowered by the spiritual energy. When covered by the cloud of material energy, the living entity, who is also a spiritual energy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, forgets about the activities of the spiritual energy and considers all that happens in the material manifestation to be wonderful. But a person who is engaged in devotional service in full Krishna consciousness, and who is therefore already situated in the spiritual energy, can understand that the material energy has no independent powers. Whatever actions are going on are due to the help of the spiritual energy. The material energy, which is a perverted form of the spiritual energy, presents everything pervertedly, thus causing misconceptions and duality. Material scientists and philosophers, conditioned by the spell of material energy, material nature, suppose that material energies act automatically, and therefore they are frustrated, like an illusioned person who tries to get milk from the nipple-like bunches of skin on the neck of a goat. As there is no possibility of getting milk from these bunches of skin, there is similarly no possibility that anyone will be successful in understanding the original cause of creation by putting forward theories produced by the material energy. Such an attempt is a manifestation of ignorance. The material energy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead is called Maya, or illusion, because in two capacities, by supplying the material elements and by causing the material manifestation, it makes the conditioned soul unable to understand the real truth of creation. However, when a living entity is liberated from the conditioned life of matter, he can understand the two different activities of material nature, namely covering and bewildering. The origin of creation is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, as confirmed in the Bhagavad Gita 9.10. The cosmic manifestation is working under the direction of the Supreme Lord, who invests the material energy with three material qualities. Agitated by these qualities, the elements supplied by the material energy produce varieties of things, just as an artist produces varieties of pictures by mixing the three colors, red, yellow, and blue. Yellow represents the quality of goodness, red represents passion, and blue represents ignorance. Therefore, the colorful manifestation, material creation, is but an interaction of these three qualities, represented in 81 varieties of mixtures. 3 times 3 equaling 9, 9 times 9, thus equaling 81. Deluded by material energy, the conditioned soul, enamored by these 81 varieties of manifestations, wants to lord it over material energy, as a moth wants to enjoy a fire. This illusion is the net result of the conditioned soul's forgetfulness of his eternal relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. When conditioned, the Lord is impelled by the material energy to engage in sense gratification, whereas one enlightened by the spiritual energy engages himself in the service of the Supreme Lord in his eternal relationship. Krishna is the original cause of the spiritual world, and he is the covered cause of the material manifestation. He is both the original cause of the marginal energy. He is also the original cause of the marginal potency, the living entities. He is both the leader and maintainer of the living entities, who are called the marginal potency, because they can act under the protection of the spiritual energy or under the cover of the material energy. With the help of the spiritual energy, we can understand that independence is visible only in Krishna. This is really important. With the help of the spiritual energy, we can understand that independence is visible only in Krishna, who by his inconceivable energy is able to act in any way he likes. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is the absolute truth, the absolute whole, The Supreme Personality of Godhead is the absolute whole, and the living entities are parts of the absolute whole. This relationship of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and the living entities is eternal. One should never mistakenly think that the spiritual whole can be divided into small parts by the small material energy. The Bhagavad Gita does not support this Mayavad theory. Rather, it clearly states that the living entities are eternally small fragments of the supreme spiritual whole. As a part can never be equal with the whole, so a living entity, as a minute fragment of the spiritual whole, cannot be equal at any time to the supreme whole, the absolute personality of Godhead. Although the Supreme Lord and the living entities are quantitatively related as the whole and the parts are nevertheless qualitatively one with the whole. Thus the living entities, although always qualitatively one with the Supreme Lord, are in a relative position. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is the controller of everything, and the living entities are always controlled, either by the spiritual energy or by the material energy. Therefore, a living entity can never become the controller of material or spiritual energies. The natural position of the living being is always as a subordinate of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. When one agrees to act in such a position, he attains perfection in life. But if one rebels against this principle, he is in the conditioned state. And we'll stop there. We're right at a stopping place. The mystery of the living entities and the Supreme Lord, the spiritual and the material energy, so wonderful. So because this is not so easy to understand, the sentimentalists, the sahajas, they think it's just troublesome, and they try to go right to the spiritual world without understanding this, and they mistake the activities of the spiritual world, or conflate, rather, the activities of the material world with the activities of the spiritual world. Okay, that's it for the night in terms of reading. Anybody has any reflections on that incredibly deep but simple, actually. There's just a lot of details. Philosophy. Looks like Amaya's scrolling down. He must have something to scroll with.
Something from Nityänanda, Prabhupada.
Hare Krishna Nityänanda.
He says, Dear Srila Guru Maharaj, please accept my obeisances. With your permission, a reflection. In modern days, with internet search engines and Vedabase, Vanipedia, and other resources at the tip of our fingers, composing a text like the one we are presently hearing would be a colossal task which only few would be able to accomplish. It is profoundly astounding that the Vaishnava saints Krishnadas Kaviraj and Srila Prabhupada were able to present such work in the absence of such facilities.
Yes. And let us not leave out Srila Prabhupada's dearmost editors. because they make the English, as perfect as possible, and they're still doing it. But yes, it's true. Prabhupada could just get a dictaphone out and have the book in front of him, all the books in front of him, and just put together those purports just by looking at them. It's completely astounding. I agree with you 1000%. So therefore I have evolved this philosophy, especially since I'm working with this panel, that Srila Prabhupada's desire was that his thoughts be edited in such a way as they are as in perfect English as possible without changing his message. That's the perfection of editing. Anyone who has read the first canto of Bhagavatam came over with Prabhupada on the boat from Delhi, and then reads the first volume of the Bhagavatam, first canto of Bhagavatam, as it is now, edited and published under his direction, will see the difference clearly. Thank you very much for that very nice realization. It is, yes, profoundly stunning how Prabhupada could do this. Which shows you, it says it in the beginning of Caitanya-caritämrta and in other places also. I think there's another verse like that in the beginning of the Ädi-lilä that says that one shouldn't try to write transcendental literature unless he is transcendentally situated. Therefore, it's only by Srila Prabhupada's mercy that we are able to, edit and then read and understand this literature. But that's all Prabhupada's will. It's all happening by Prabhupada's will. And there's one place, well, not one place, maybe there's at least 2 or 3 times when I remember Srila Prabhupada saying something to the effect that Krishna tells him what to write directly. But it's through the mercy of the previous acharyas, and directly, meaning the thoughts of Prabhupada, putting together those thoughts of the previous acharyas, and then adding his realized knowledge to be able to put it in a way that us Westerners, English-speaking Westerners in the beginning and then in other languages afterwards, could gain access to it. That's even more stunning. Okay, what else?
Gopal Roy Das.
Hey, Gopal Roy, Haribol.
He says, hearing Srila Prabhupada's books is just what the world needs right now.
Yes, absolutely. Well said. Essential truth spoken concisely is true eloquence. What else? That's it so far? Boy. Okay, this is heavy going, but I'd like to repeat again and again. You got something else?
Yes.
Okay.
Rati Manjaro.
Hey, Rati, I was wondering when you were going to speak up.
She says, Dear Guru Maharaj, please accept my humble obeisances. It's probably a sign of my own learning points, but in tonight's reading I found it astonishing to hear how the same point, namely that the living entity is not the energetic but the energy, and cannot act independently, was reiterated in what seemed to be 50 different ways.
Yeah, that's right. And that's why repetition of a good thing is a good thing. But people who can't perceive that, they think they get bored because they're hearing the same thing over and over again. They don't realize that, like you said, it's being repeated in so many ways, a little differently, so that it can go in, so it can stay in.
She says, so compassionate of Srila Prabhupada to rephrase the same point so many times.
Yes. That absolutely. Because it's not so easy to grasp it just in one way of saying it. It needs to be seen from different all angles of vision to be able to perceive it properly. And when we do that, then we can look out and see the world in so many more dimensions. And eventually we'll see for ourselves that it's Krishna doing everything. But this is the root. I mean, not the root, it's the means by which we can do that, is this knowledge, learning it in proper perspective, what's actually happening, and looking at the world, and eventually seeing what's actually happening. The scientists are trying to do that, but they're limited to just analyze the material elements. They can't perceive the spiritual elements with their gross senses and minds and intelligence. What else?
Gopal Roy commented, he says that Rati Manjari's determination to hear you reading every night matches your determination to read each.
Now that's a nice point. Gopal Roy, you really are a poet. Very poetic thing you just said. Yes, it takes the source of hearing and the reception, both qualities. The person who's eager to read and the person who's eager to hear, that creates the picture. What else? Oh, this is heavy going. This part of the Caitanya-caritämrta is heavy going, but it's heavy going for a reason, because it strengthens our mind and intelligence and makes us more capable of relating to and absorbing the pastimes when they start to come. We won't take them for granted if we go carefully through this first section of the Caitanya-caritämrta. We get the basic philosophical patterns that are needed to assimilate, to be able to understand what's actually going on. This is not some kind of novel.
Something from Bhakta Patrick.
Bhakta Patrick from Houston, I suppose.
He says, Hare Krishna Guru Maharaj, all glories to His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada.
Jai, glories to Prabhupada. Nice to hear from you, Bhakta Patrick.
I was really appreciating how clear it was being made that this material manifestation has no power to act independently.
Yes.
I also very much liked the final sentence of the purport. The natural position of the living being is always as a subordinate of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. When one agrees to act in such a position, he attains perfection in life, but if one rebels against this principle, he is in the conditioned state. So concise. Thank you for mercifully delivering this message to us, Maharaj.
It's my pleasure. The pleasure is all mine.
And Rati Manjari has a question.
Just a second, Rati. I have to answer Ritatvaj Maharaj. Okay, go ahead.
She says, if I may ask a question related to the world situation, what should we respond to persons worried about the police brutalities?
Well, first of all, we have to understand why it is that it's causing such worry. We learn, what the duties of king or executive head, no matter what form it takes, is the duties. And we learn what the duties of the different different sectors of human society, how they're supposed to think and how they're supposed to will, how they're supposed to act, what their natural talents are, and therefore, and that's all given by God. These are the laws of nature. These laws are not created by man, they're created by God through this process that we're just hearing about today. And therefore, the first thing to do is to understand how those personalities are misbehaving, and that the misbehavior against the laws of nature is causing this strife. Because when the laws of nature are being followed, then it creates harmony and it creates peace, and therefore we can hear about and be interested in and absorbed in the goal of life. Otherwise, in other words, what you're saying is, what you're asking is, as long as we're just absorbed in the interactions of the modes of nature, we must become agitated or bewildered or enlightened by the material nature according to the predominance of that mode. So when the leaders and the followers are acting in the mode of ignorance, then it creates in passion, then it creates the material condition which causes anxiety, kunta. There's the difference between kunta and vaikunta. So if we know what our duties are, we're acting properly. If the leaders know what their duties are acting properly, and all of us are together trying to try to please the source of everything, then there can be a spiritual, not a spiritual, but a good society which can understand the spiritual and want to go to the spiritual. In other words, to understand the goal of life. But as long as the elements of society are absorbed in ignorance, forgetful of Krishna, then these things are bound to happen. And as they happen more and more, the reactions cause more and more suffering, and therefore it goes from Satya to Treta to Dwapara and to Kali Yuga. And in the Kali Yuga, this is what happens. Remember 12th canto, Bhagavatam? The leaders become plunderers. And the Kshatriyas, the persons who are the administrators and the police and the army and this and that, they become agents of violence. On the other hand, Krishna arranged the battlefield of Kurukshetra so that the sovereignty of the earth could change from a demoniac person to a divine person, from a non-devotee to a devotee. So in terms of how to respond to it, we should see it as an obvious result of a lack of Krishna consciousness, of a lack of understanding of how to use this body and the resources and all the things that we have in a way that can cause satisfaction in the body and the senses. There's one nice verse in the Gita that talks about how when the body's in the mode of goodness and the mind's in the mode of goodness, then we experience happiness in all the gates of our body. In other words, we become actually healthy. So the point is, if we can see it philosophically, then we won't get sucked in to the conspiracy theories and all of these kinds of things that even I've heard that even devotees are starting to get into this, and they're starting to. There's some conspiracy that the demons are in control, and Trump is actually divinely inspired to shake up. But we were reading the other day the 16th chapter of the Gita and the qualities of a person who is demonic by nature, and all you have to do is compare and watch carefully through that knowledge, and you'll see that all the leaders, including Trump, are demonic. Eventually, and this will take a long time, many, many generations, as Prabhupada's knowledge begins to circulate, it is already circulated. I mean, when I was small, I mean, the name Krishna was nowhere to be seen. I mean, maybe a few, ivory tower scholars knew about Krishna, but practically nobody, where I was living at least, knew about Krishna. And now Krishna's name is all over the world in just 70 years or 80 years. So just do the math. What happens if it was going on for 1,000 years or 2,000 years? Because that's the nature of the Krishna consciousness movement. It will keep expanding because it's Lord Chaitanya's will. So it'll take a long time, but eventually, Krishna conscious people will be more instead of interviewing all these people who have the foggiest idea what's going on, the high pundits in the media will be able to interview the devotees and find out what's actually going on. And then that will help. Maybe that'll help. I mean, it will help, but it will take a long time. I don't know if that answers the question exactly, but it's not an easy question to answer. Just don't get angry at those who are acting like this because they are under the influence of material nature just like we are. Less because we're hearing the Bhagavatam and Caitanya-caritämrta together. But we should not become the enemy of our enemy. We should not see the world in terms of friends and enemies. And that's exactly what's happening. Trump seeing the whole world as his enemy practically, because he's really bewildered. And the other people, according to their black and white, or, man or woman, or something in between, whatever they're trying to be that they are not, that now they're trying to become the opposite thing. Whatever it is, transgender and all these things, they're all just different bodies, kind of flapping around, being blown by the winds of the modes of nature in different ways, that's all. And in that way, real knowledge detaches us from those illusory thoughts, allows us to see things as they are and be satisfied by knowing things as they are. That doesn't mean that we don't have compassion. Even the people in the highest planetary systems, they don't have any anxiety for themselves. I'm talking about Satyaloka, not the heavenly planets. They're still in the three worlds and they are disturbed all the time. But above, when you go through the gateway to the higher planets, Mahaloka, Janaloka, Tapaloka, Satyaloka, in these places they don't feel the same sufferings that we do. Their bodies are very subtle. not subject to the gross sufferings. But they feel compassion. They do suffer because they see, the suffering of the conditioned souls in the three worlds. So that's the position. If we see things through Krishna's eyes, through the eyes of knowledge, then we will not be so disturbed, even though we see it, and even though we feel the suffering of others, we don't become caught up in it in a way that we will become, a part of the problem.
Rati says, thank you. That's illuminating.
Okay, what else? Okay, thank you so much, everyone. We'll continue. More of the same. Nectar. Tomorrow at the same time, same place, right here in the live studios in Hythe, Kent, England, UK. Shri Caitanya-caritämrta ki jai. Gaur Premanandi Hari Hari Bol. Samaveda Bhakta Vrinda ki jai. See you tomorrow. Hare Krishna.